let's talk about all the things your character did before they became a character. Today on RPGs Beyond the Roll. I'm Brian.
I'm Derica.
And this is something that actually somebody suggested to us recently.
Yeah, this is character backstory. So this isn't the mechanics that are included.
That's background.
That's background.
Yep.
This is backstory. So this is like...
What is a backstory? Let's just back it up.
Yeah.
Back it up and talk about backstories. It's something that the player writes that is essentially what happened to them, their life leading up to the day they became a character in the campaign.
Some things to consider is your family. Mm-hmm. Do you have brothers and sisters? Are your parents still alive? Are your grandparents still alive? Did they have something interesting happen in their family's history?
Now, first guideline I'm going to give. I love writing backstories. I like to write. So for me, I can overdo it super easy. And that's the first thing you don't want to do. You do not need to have 12 pages of backstory. Literally 4 or 5 paragraphs tops is all you really need.
So we are coming at this from the viewpoint that you are starting at level 1 in whatever campaign you're about to play.
Right.
So before that, they were level 0. They were nothing, essentially. Now,
something to understand is if your campaign starts at a higher level, obviously some of this is going to have to adjust. Like if you're starting it as a level 10 character, yeah, you can have quite a bit of things that have happened to you already, but we're playing it as you're starting at level 1. So like Derica said, you're level 0 in your backstory. You got no character sheet, no nothing, no special abilities. You're essentially an NPC. It's true.
So we're going to talk about different concepts that you might want to take into consideration based on that fact. And so the first one we're going to talk about is you are not an epic hero at level 1.
Yeah, I've actually heard of people writing these backstories where they battled red dragons and fought kings and all this stuff. And I'm like, really?
No, you didn't.
How are you going to come into but now they're going to come into a campaign as a level 1 character with like 9 hit points. You know, like, come on.
As a DM, the only way I would allow that to slide is if something unnatural or catastrophic occurred from when that backstory happened to when you're starting the game.
But a counterpoint to that is, even if they had some catastrophic thing that reduced them in strength or whatever down to what a level 1 could be, they still have that experience of doing that, which I would still have a real problem with somebody doing that.
I can see certain instances when it would be appropriate, but they're very specific.
Yeah, it's kind of rare
and narrow.
Something I wanted to get on too. I said about the 4 or 5 paragraphs versus 12 pages. There's reasons for that because I'm guilty of this myself. So this is partially I need to remind myself.
True confession time for Brian.
I have written out backstories that included stories that I thought were really cool. And now I've pigeonholed my character into a specific play style because I've made them so specific that there isn't any room for character growth. Character growth is such a huge thing. If you are still playing your character with the same persona, same personality, same everything, likes, dislikes, flaws, fears, everything at level 20 as you did at level 1, I'm sorry, but you've missed the point of Dungeons and Dragons. So by setting all that in stone before they even became a level 1, I did myself a huge disservice. And both times that I did that, because I did it just recently, I found myself very unhappy with the character within just a few sessions of playing because they didn't live up to what I wrote in the story. Now, I didn't write anything that was like, superhero style or anything like that. Just the game wasn't playing out the same way that the character's persona should have made it play. And it made it very hard because now I have this, they're just opposing forces not working well together at all. So it's much better to have kind of a general thing. Don't be too general, but what I like to do is they were born to this, and they lived in this area, and dad or mom owned this business or did this for a living, or we lived in squalor or whatever it might be. And then tell one story that happened in their childhood or in their upbringing that kind of set the tone and defined what their path might be. And then come up with a reason for them to be an adventurer. That is, oh my God, the biggest thing. If your character is not into adventuring, make a new character. because that's what Dungeons and Dragons is. That's what role-playing games are. They're about adventuring and exploring.
The stuff you include in your backstory should also relate in some fashion to your actual character sheet.
Yeah.
So if you decide that you want to play a warlock, for example, and you have nothing in your backstory that remotely explains how the heck you became a warlock in the first place, then you probably missed out on an important detail.
Yeah, warlock is an exception here because that does require acceptance and a pact. It really does require the character to have made that choice. Now, a wizard, you could just be born super intelligent with an ability to cast magic that you don't understand. Sorcerer would be much the same. Actually, sorcerer is even more so that way. Bard is also like that. It's just like this innate thing. Rogue could just be somebody that happened to be really good with their hands and was very dexterous growing up. A fighter, that's easy. You just like beating things up. I mean, there's so many different ways to incorporate that. Just, it needs to make sense is all it is.
Lots of the build backgrounds that are part of your character sheet should also relate or coordinate with your backstory as well.
Yeah.
You don't want to choose mercenary and...
That's not even a background anymore.
Okay. I don't know what...
Yeah, they changed the way backgrounds are for 2024, and we're not going to go through them all, but I'm going to make a statement here. As much as you want your background to match your backstory and your character, the way they implemented backgrounds makes that complicated sometimes because your ability scores come from your background. So I found myself, like when I'm making dex-based characters, I kind of have to be a charlatan, a criminal, or a guide in order to up my dex. And I don't necessarily think that all three of those apply, or any of those three apply to every single character that I make. So I take that with a little bit of a grain of salt because some of it doesn't even make sense. Like the guide background, for example, gives you the druid wizard initiate. You get 2 cantrips and a first level spell. What does that have to do with being a guide?
That's a good question.
So the implementation that they did of backgrounds, I wish you could really alter them. I don't think the names mean all that much to me. That's me personally. I like to make it match if I can, but it doesn't always work that way.
So I have an itemized list, and we started at the top, but I think we need to get back to that later and actually jump down a few and talk about motivations.
Yep.
So this is something that's going to help you portray your character as a real living person, is to know what motivates them as a person. Think about the stereotypical scene of the actor or actress who is asking the director, what are my motivations? This is important information for you to portray that role. Because
it is a role-playing game. R-O-L-E, not R-O-L-L. In other words, you are taking on a role of another person, and that's where having that motivation is super important.
So let's say you chose Bard as your character build. So what would motivate a Bard, and what could you include in your backstory that would motivate that particular person to go forth and seek whatever they're seeking? They might be the ultimate storyteller, and they're just looking for the perfect, fascinating story. And that's what pushed them to go out of their small hamlet or whatever to meet up with interesting people and write these great stories. They might be looking for hidden knowledge that they want to share with the rest of the world and find that really neat artifact. There's so many different things that could motivate them that you could include in their background that's going to help you progress that character along with what interactions they come across during gameplay.
Or another alternative for a bard, for example, is my character Killian. He grew up in a poor neighborhood in squalor, but he always kind of had a silver tongue. He met somebody who was actually quite the shyster and charlatan himself, who taught him how to kind of talk his way into things and talk his way out of things. And he ended up becoming a bard rogue. But that was kind of how he became a bard, because all these things the guy taught him how to do poetry and how to woo women. And I mean, he was very stereotypical bard that way, although he wasn't completely. But that's where his motivations came from. In the end, he ended up actually dropping a bag of gold on his parents one day and saying, thanks. So not that leads to something else that happens later on. But it was just, you can write the same different stories for the same class and come out completely different and have a different reason why your character does certain things. As a result, Killian had a soft spot for women and younger people in general. He felt bad if they were in trouble. He always wanted to protect them.
Yeah. And so it is also the influences that happened in that individual's life. So be it their family, their friends, perhaps a foe, whatever had an impact on their earlier years is something you want to include in the backstory, because that's going to help develop them and round them out as a character so that they might be, as Brian's example, more sensitive to people in need, or have maybe a built-in dislike for a certain personality type, or who knows, you want to think about these things and use your imagination, or own experience, or watch movies. You can find inspiration for a character's backstory, and
movies are
persona,
a great way to do it.
Literally anywhere. Yeah,
grab a character that you really like from comic books, from movies, whatever, and try to ground it into the world of whatever art. And this applies for all RPGs, not just D&D, but we're just most familiar with D&D. You can kind of ground that into whatever world you're playing in so that it makes sense.
The one word of caution I want to give, if you're basing your character off of a movie character or a book or comic character,
change the name,
is you don't want to get stuck there.
Yep.
That's just a beginning point.
Exactly.
Let the progression of the gameplay motivate, change, mold your character as they go forth. Don't get stuck in that preconceived pigeonhole. That is just a starting point.
Which is exactly what I was saying about don't make too detailed of a backstory, because it could just pigeonhole you to that one style, that one thing, and you'll feel like you're doing a disservice to your character if you change. Another really simple backstory, like really my roguish gnome, she lived in a small village. That village got raided by orcs on a regular basis. She has a scar on her face from that. So as a result, she hates orcs. I mean, most people hate orcs unless you're an orc, but she in particular hates them. And whenever there's an orc around, she just about loses her mind to do whatever she needs to do to hurt that orc, especially now that she's gotten higher in level and has a lot more confidence. That's something, though, that has been with her since level 1, but she's grown with it. She doesn't get stupid about it anymore. She used to actually almost put herself in harm's way as a result of seeing an orc. Now, less so, but she still doesn't want to work with them, doesn't want to help them, doesn't want to talk to them, does not want anything to do with them if possible, and would probably take a swing at one if given the opportunity.
She did find one that she actually learned to appreciate, though. So,
that's character change and development.
You want to give yourself some leeway and never draw a firm line in the sand. You want to be able to have your character change, not out of character.
But if there's a reason for the change, too.
But if they have a new experience that's make them rethink some of their old ideas, that's part of character growth.
Yeah.
That is part of their story now.
Sure.
So allow that to happen. Another thing that I find happening a lot, particularly to new players, is that they're afraid to include flaws. And I really encourage you to include flaws. Flaws sometimes are so much better.
They make it interesting
Than being the all-over epic hero.
Yeah, a perfect person doesn't exist, first off, and they're boring. People who are perfect at everything about them is perfect. They have zero, they make no mistakes. Everything they do is perfect. They're the prime example of every situation. That's boring, especially in a role-playing game, because as much as it may sound sort of fun on the surface to make every roll perfect, make every single skill check perfect, everything you do is a success, that game is going to get old so fast.
And that one time that you mess up, you're just going to be devastated and question everything. You have to give yourself and your characters some room to fail. And in my experience with role-playing, some of my happiest and fondest moments came from an epic fail rather than an epic win.
Accept failure. That's a thing that I'm hearing a lot lately for people talking about RPGs, because a lot of people now are coming into RPGs from video games, where in a video game, the point is for you to win.
Yeah.
In an RPG, there is no winning or losing. You're telling a story. And that's really how you have to see an RPG, is that is a community story. It's a bunch of people getting together to tell a story. You have a DM who's guiding things and giving you roadblocks and giving you help and a leg up here and there and just keeping the story moving. But really the players are all telling a story, and not every story is about winning every single thing, because that's a boring ass story. I mean, who wants to watch that all the time?
So we're going to talk a little bit about the elaborate backstories that you may want to avoid. But to start off with, sometimes an adventurous spirit is simply enough.
Yep. I have made many characters that there was nothing bad ever happened to them. They just got curious and decided, I want to be an adventurer. I want to go out and see the world. I want to get out of this little town. I want to get out of this big town. Didn't matter. They just want to do it. And that was it. And that could be a great start to a character.
Maybe an adventurer retired in your town and it would tell you stories, and you were just fascinated by those and wanted to go do that for yourself. Or
maybe you grew up in a little farm town that no one ever left, and you want to know what's outside, like at this point, this is the furthest I've ever been from home. One more step, from
The Hobbit?
The Hobbit. That was The Hobbit, not Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah, that was The Hobbit.
Are you sure? No, that was Lord of the Rings.
That was Lord of the Rings?
Mm-hmm. That was the first one.
Okay. My apologies.
It's all right. There's 7 movies, something like that.
All right. So Brian already touched on about it a little bit, and this is another thing that I think is really important to stress, and that is not every story needs to be sad.
Oh, yeah. The edgelord thing is just so old.
It was really common that your motivation had to become from a place of tragedy.
Yep.
And that...
I don't know why.
That's not necessary.
And I think it's because a lot of, like, if you think in the comic books, like the superheroes and stuff, like think Batman.
Yeah.
He's the classic, came from a tragedy, turned into a superhero. So a lot of people can appeal to that. And I think there's something of escapism here too. Like, everybody has their problems in life, and maybe, as a child you had problems. So you're acting out now to make up for that. And I can appreciate it. But you don't have to be that way. If that is how you want your character to be, just understand that there are some limitations with that too. You are placing a very serious psychological effect in your character's brain, which you could overcome in time, but it's going to take time to overcome. You're not going to walk into the game with this serious dark past that you're terrified of this or you're hell-bent to destroy that, and in one session get over it. That shouldn't happen. It really shouldn't be that way.
All right. So now we're going to go back to the
We just keep going all over the place.
The things that we want to caution you about perhaps not including in your backstory. And that we started off, we're back to it again. You're not an epic hero at level 1.
Unless the campaign you're playing in, you are meant to be that, which is possible.
Sure.
It's not something very common, but most campaigns that you would play, you're supposed to start out as basically a peon who builds up to something. And to me, that's a much better story than I am already a king and now I have to defend my kingdom or something. I mean, that's just, I guess it could happen.
Speaking of kings, royalty? Really? There have been so many people I've played with, both online and at tabletop, that wanted to have a royal background.
Yep.
And first of all, that is both overpowered and super limiting.
Yes.
If you are truly a noble, your people
will not let you go.
Will not let you go. Just frolic about.
Yeah, that's not likely to happen. Plus, if you are a noble, you would have immense access to everything, whether it's wealth, whether it's items, connections. It makes the game less interesting because literally if you're a noble and you're in the land that you're a noble, everyone there would bow down to you because that's just the way it is in this world. That's the way it should be anyway. Unless you're a well-hated noble, in which that's a different thing.
Sure.
But even still, I think that's too much for a level 1 character to have.
I think as a DM, and I'm going to say only, but there's never a never or only. There's always room for adjustments, but typically the only way I would allow for a player to be a noble type character is if they were incognito. So they were a noble, but for all intents and purposes in gameplay, they were just nobody. They changed their name. They changed their appearance. They never used any of their connections.
But the downside,
they shied away from all those things. And so
that's a slippery slope though. Because
sure.
if you ever go to an area where their family or their name would be known, they could still get recognized.
Right. They would have to use a false name. They would have to
They could still get
disguised
recognized.
Kit all the time.
Yeah. And to me, where's the benefit of having that?
Yeah.
To me, that's not a lot of fun. When you have to work that hard to be incognito, you don't get to be yourself anymore, which means now you're basically playing 2 characters, like one that's hidden and secret, and you have to work really hard to do that. And then you have a false identity too.
Sure.
Which, I mean, some people might think that's fun. I personally think that's way too much work.
I was just thinking back to Critical Role Campaign 3, I think. Robbie's character, where he was the Genasi.
Yeah.
So he was from a royal line, but he escaped that to be his own person and find his own way.
Right. That did come up a few times, though. And that connection was still, I don't know.
Yeah. But that was the most interesting role play of a noble that I've seen play out. So
most of the time it just becomes a sweeping, overwhelming, overpowered thing. And even the DM is like, well, whatever, sure. You get that because you're the prince. That's no fun.
So hopefully we've kept referencing it, but we haven't said it straight outright. Regardless of what path you want to take as what happened to your character beforehand, there should be an open discussion and agreement with your table, your DM, the other players.
Well, you should. I don't discuss my backstory with the other players.
You don't have to discuss it with the other characters because that should come up in character when they meet you. But the parameters of what is allowed and what isn't allowed,
that should be talked about.
Should be agreed
and
upon.
And all backstories should be DM approved.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it doesn't make a lot of sense. People could get really, really silly.
Yeah.
And you don't want, like if you have 4 people in your party, one person's a noble, another one fought a red dragon before they were 10 years old. And then you have another one that just, I don't know, I'm just a poor little farm kid, wanted to get out of town. You put all those together, the farm kid is going to lose because the other 2 have so much more influence, so much more power in the world already. And it shouldn't be that way. That's kind of what we're getting at, is that all backstories should be relatively equal and, I hate to say it, but kind of mundane. They really shouldn't be that big of a deal. You should not be a well-known person in any way, in anything, except maybe if you lived in a small village.
Now, if you aren't like Brian, who likes to write all the things, there's some new things that may aid you. And I hate to say it, but that's AI. It is a tool.
Yeah, ChatGPT actually works pretty well. It
can be useful, but you don't want to let it take control.
No, because it'll do weird things.
Of what you're going. You want to be able to give it as much information and much direction as possible. And that way it's still your own idea.
Yep. I use it to help with ideas. Like I'll write in, say, okay, I'm building a rogue character who is from this area in Faerun, and give me some ideas on how they got inspired to become a rogue or how they got to become a rogue. And it'll give you some ideas. They're not always great, but some of them might go, oh, that's actually kind of neat. I can work with that. And then you can take that idea and ask it more questions.
Yeah.
And it can just about write it for you, but you're influencing it the whole way to be what you want it to be. That's one way. The other way, I mean, honestly, your backstory doesn't even have to be written well. It just needs to be a general description of the character, where they came from, their roots, if you will. It doesn't have to have like a family tree 15 generations long. Just parents and siblings is usually enough, if they have any, if they know if they have any. And like I like to say, one story that kind of turned the tide for them, one story that kind of pushed them in one direction or another. Another example of a story. My current character that I'm playing in a campaign was on a ship with her sister because her dad, or their family, owns a trading company, and they liked to be on the ship. Well, they were young teenagers, let's say like preteen, and the ship got raided by pirates. Well, that right there changed it because her dad now said, you can't go on the ships anymore. That made my character say, oh yeah, you can't tell me what to do, because she's that type. Then on that same voyage, one of the crew members displayed a way of using magic that she'd never seen before. So she asked questions about it, and he was a paladin. And she learned a little bit of the ways of the paladin, and that helped guide her toward what she ended up becoming. That's it. That's the whole story. That's how she became what she is. Very, very simple.
Yep. As a DM, I really encourage people to take time to write a backstory and include as much information as they're comfortable with including, because I can then utilize that information and sometimes incorporate that into the story or the campaign that we're playing to make it more interesting for the individual.
And that's the second reason for a backstory. The first is for the player to know what motivates your character and makes them know who they are. The second is so that the DM can incorporate that into that story, into the whole gameplay. And basically, like, everybody gets their own little arc. And if you watch Critical Role, they do that. Every character has their own little arc at some point. And it's all based on the backstories that they had with Matt. And Matt looked at those backstories, saw what he could do with it, and incorporated that into the campaign. Yep. Even pre-made campaigns, though, you can have like a little side quest story arcs for things that you can incorporate in as a DM to make the character feel like they're part of that world and that their backstory matters. To me, there's nothing better than when your whole party is getting in on it and wanting to work with your character on their arc. I had a character one time. This was an online Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm just going to tell a brief synopsis of the story. Essentially, I did a thing that was supposedly against the rules on the place that I was at. The DMs didn't care until this one DM that was away for years came back. He didn't like it, so he dropped me 5 levels. Well, then he said, but I'll let you earn them back, and you get to do the thing that you did in the first place, but through role play, and there'll be all this other things. So I got the entire contents of the server, like 40 or 50 players, to be involved in this. Basically, I made it a nightmare for the DM because he didn't expect it to turn into this huge thing, turning into like several full day long events of 40 or 50 people that he had to manage.
There were different groups that were together on this server.
Yep.
And Brian's character got each group to do this special thing.
Everybody.
It was beautiful.
Yep. And that to me is how you can motivate a character into doing things. But it made the backstory matter more. It made the character more part of the world, and it became part of her story and was told for a long time afterwards. Yep. It was just, that to me is really, really cool. And that's the way you can incorporate stories and backgrounds of people into things.
If you create a lone wolf style character, that is going to limit.
Don't be Batman.
Limit your role play, not only for yourself, but your character won't be willing or motivated to interact with the other players on the table, the other characters at the table. It's much better to find ways to make personal connections with the rest of the group, because that way your motivations can start to be their motivations and your wins can start to be their wins as well. Yep. And that's going to make overall gameplay enjoyable for everyone.
I'm going to use an example, not of one of my characters this time, but Strider from Lord of the Rings. When we're introduced to him, he is the lone wolf sitting in the corner with his hood covering his face, and he's all dark and dangerous. But if you watch the movie, he actually integrates with the group. He works with them. He talks to them. He is helpful and knowledgeable and supportive. If he just played the sullen, I'm going to sulk around and not really say anything, he'd have been a much less interesting character. So there's a perfect example of he's sort of still a lone wolf, but not really. You can come out of that hole and still kind of keep that edge if that's really what you want to do. I tend to play characters that are easy for me to come out of my shell by playing characters with some charisma, at least a couple of points in the charisma, just so that I'm not going to be the lone wolf, sullen, alone, that kind of thing. Because I can fall into that pretty easily too if I wanted to, but it's a community and that type of game. You want it to be a group. So if one member of the group is off doing their own thing or is always separate from the group, they're not going to want to help you and you're not going to want to help them. And before you know it, you have two parties. And that's not really helpful. You want to make sure that you have a team player. I guess that's something we should have put in the notes too.
Sure. And this is a good point to add to this that doesn't have to do with backstory so much, but the backstory is part of your character development. Mm-hmm. So if you are really uncomfortable playing a gregarious character like Brian.
I'm not uncomfortable with it.
No, you are a gregarious character.
I'm very comfortable playing a gregarious character.
Then maybe don't do that unless you're willing to push yourself and go out of your comfort zone. But then you have to be doing that all the time.
Right.
The same thing, if you're not comfortable just sitting on the sidelines and being timid, then don't make that character because it's going to be really uncomfortable and potentially, as Brian has witnessed, not fun at all.
Yeah.
So you want to create a character that either is something you want to explore outside of yourself or that is something in line with
something easy for you to do
that feels like a comfortable place to be.
Yeah. All my characters have distinct personalities, but they can kind of be characterized similarly for the most part. For the most part. Not everybody.
I would say I'm a bit of a full gamut.
She's all over the place. She's played some characters that it's like, okay, you can speak now. You can talk now. Say something. To, okay, you can stop. Let somebody else have a turn, will you? And that's the cool part about Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games is that you get to play as a different person, and every character should be different. They shouldn't all be the same. I think some of mine are a little too similar sometimes. I intentionally work hard when I make a new character to make something different than the last one, and it might just be a personality trait that's different sometimes. Could be I could play the exact same character build twice, and there'll be completely different things.
Regardless of what character you choose to play and what their backstory is, remember, this is a game and it's intended to have fun.
Right. So if you're having fun at what you're doing, you're not doing it wrong. And if you're not having fun at what you're doing, you should be doing something else. I think that's all we got for this one. So may the rolls ever be in your favor. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.